from Sudan, refugees. Right? And this was a small town chosen in Maine because it had no population at all. So they took all these people who come as refugees out of a war-torn Sudan, all of them Muslim, and put them black African Muslims, and they are sent to this white town in the northeast of the United States. And they don't belong, right? What is the student's sense of identity? How can we use their memory in a positive and assertive way in the classroom? This was a Harvard Graduate School of Education project that I was working on, and out of that came the word creative placemaking. Because unless we can deal with this mass migration of people, and in our country it's in our slums. So the current creative placemaking projects in Srishti are called Place Arts. And we've started youth collectives in the slums because actually the people in the slums of Bangalore are not Kannadiga at all. They could have come from many, Bihar, Bengal, Orissa. They arrived, they set squatter camps and they lived there. The women go to work as domestics, men are in construction, they're drinking, they're dying, and the children have grown up for the second generation. How do they know who they are? So when we say culture, habitat and sustainable development, to me it's a very concrete thing. It's not something abstract for UNESCO. To me it's to that youth collective and what it's doing. In terms of critical making, again, linking it to environmental and ecological crisis, one of the things we're saying is don't make something there's already too much of it. That's what is called plenitude. When there's so much out there, don't make more of it. And secondly, we are looking very carefully at what are post-digital futures. The post-digital future is not a space that I can define today, but it needs definition. It needs us to understand what it is. So in terms of looking at confluence, I've removed the word design and I've put science. We've created many groups inside, and these are just a few. The website will tell you that there are about 11 or 12. UNESCO Chair is one such center. Design Earth is a group of people who, who only work with natural materials, and they work making pizza ovens if you want them, a home in a treetop if you want them, a lab in some place else if you want them. But they work with our students and they work both in the classroom and outside. They're a group of artists and architects. DEL stands for Design, Environment and Law. And law has become a very, very big part of what we do at Srishti, because without law, environment doesn't mean anything. Right? You can talk all you want about the environment, but unless you have law. So that's there we have one. And then LENS is local learning networks for sustainability. And we have set up a learning network inside this country. If any of you are in colleges that would like to join that network, please join. It's free and it's open. What we do is we run common studios across India. So from IIT Guwahati to Hunashala in Kutch, to government colleges of architecture, we have created a learning network and a platform on which we can share lesson plans, we can share ideas, we can share and teach common studios and bring students together. So that's one of the initiatives there. Art in Transit, I'm going to show you some pictures. It takes creative placemaking into a really new space, which is the Bangalore Metro. We are in partnership with the Metro and with the BART in San Francisco. And we're trying to use telepresence and technology to get this huge migration of people who are just senselessly rushing through the metro from one place to the other, to stop, to pause, to think, and it's working. It's been a 2-year struggle, but it's working. And then, of course, we've tied up with Science Gallery Dublin and Science Gallery King's College London to see how we can use the life sciences in a critical way. It's because synthetic biology, biodesign, biobricks are all part of what's going to come. So how can we look at that a little critically? So critical making involving biology. Show you a few pictures about how we moved into the making space. This was the India Art Fair and we were outside the art fair because we decided that we would actually build a dome. Go on. And there we are outside. So here what is the importance of this is we changed the notion of art practice. You know, an artist building a geodesic dome that will actually be a biology lab in which DNA is being tested and recreated. That's what's happening inside there. It's synthetic biology. They're taking DNA and they're manipulating DNA and they're creating new DNA. Right there, and they're artists. So what that did was it changed the nature of who am I. It went from a DIY mind to a DIY mindset, and it means that we now talk about design and build. So in our Pune center, our interior course is called Design and Build Interiors. We're no longer talking interior design, right? We're saying that we'll continue into the making. If you design, you make, you produce. So we're not breaking it up. We also find that code, culture, context, content creation all have to be linked, and I put code first quite deliberately. I got hammered on this in Cochin. But I do think that you can't have people today who can't manipulate or hack code. They don't have to be computer scientists. But if you can't get behind that app, you're going to get done for. So that's what we need to do. And the confluence of art, design, technology, and the human sciences is what is now changing the nature of practice. Here is another thing of my art students out at the art fair. They're actually going to send up those helium balloons, and what those helium balloons did is that they geotagged and geomapped that entire art fair in the next 20 minutes. And they were able to give them the spatial mapping of the art fair, and they were not people who are taking a G. What I'm trying to tell you is it's quick, fast, and dirty now. It doesn't have to be slow and considered. These kids went out and did it. The next one shows the balloons going up in the air at the art fair. And this is considered art practice. This is in the metro station. These are artists who are working live with data. What you see on the ground is millions of pixels of data from people's mobile phones. Information visualization turned into something visible. And in the same installation, all those people whose things were being mapped have got their cell phones out. They all say their data is secure, and it's not, that they've got all their passwords in place, and then the geotagging shows exactly where their data has gone. And this actually, everybody would come out of the metro and then go in there to check how secure their phone was, and then they would walk around and see where in the world their data was going. And these kind of living experiences really help us for people to make sense of the future. This is again the metro station where we're working with migration and migratory cultures. Moving images of people who are in transit and what they're saying. Different video installation with all the voices coming across. Again, different things that people can do while they're in the metro station, so they don't just have to rush to catch a train, and they can pause. And so public space design is what this was all about, right? So we don't call it interior architecture or interior design. The Shrishti program in Master of Design is called public space design. And the metro are so happy. We've done 2 metro stations now. The Pina metro station and the very prestigious Kaman Park metro station. And I understand that we're just going to be given a 3rd metro station to do. And we have done it as a mixture of permanent exhibits and transient things, events that happen inside the metro station. So if all that looks rosy and wonderful, where is the fight? Right? Nothing is ever simple. The battleground is between what we call interdisciplinarity and confluence, and the fact that the large numbers of people want rigor and disciplinary knowledge. And it's a fact. There are lots of people who come to me. I mean, I'm currently fighting a battle just now where I've got a photographer, very eminent photographer, and he said, Geeta, I don't know. I'm going to rewrite everything. You need to start photography with foundation. You know, so this linear, sequential, grade school method that you have a level 1, a level 2, a level 3, and you have to then move yourself up, versus the mindset that you live in the real world and everything is complex and you have to start attacking everything at the same time. Climate change is not going to wait while we figure out 1, 2, 3. Then this is notion about what should be the text, the canon, right? Do we take them out of classical traditions and textbooks, which are largely not Southern practice oriented, they largely come from Western practices and not there. And popular culture tends to come from the street. It's jugaad, it's how people live, right? So what is this canon that the student has to use, right? And actually, Professor Menon, when he came to talk in Srishti for the UNESCO chair, and because of the NEPRO programs we were running, he was saying, Geeta, compare Bangalore and Benares. You know, Bangalore is a city it's supposed to be designed, and yesterday's newspaper article said that if, you know, by 2030 anybody who lives there will die of asphyxiation. And Benares is a city which is an age-old city which never had anything called urban planning or urban design, and it's growing in its own organic way and is doing okay. So what we need to do is we really need to look at where are the canons coming from. In science, whether it's coming from what we call people science, which is what people know, and this is what Vandana Shiva and others are talking about, or do we take it from Western empirical test and adopt methods? The same thing with alternative systems. And do we go with large-scale industry-driven models where everything has to go to scale through best practices, or do we design for niche conditions very frugally and very simply? I mean, these are the kind of battlegrounds. I'm not saying I have an answer to it, but this is where the battle. And really, to be frugal means to encourage simplicity, redundancy, and attack plenitude. And that redundancy is very important because the phone is an example of having one too many things on it. Right? So if you want something to get simpler, it gets less costly, it has less impact on the environment, you can make fewer, you can just adjust it to local need. Now these begin in this notion of looking at sustainable development. It's a completely different idea. So we have just set up a big attempt at this by setting up a frugal design lab in Srishti, and it's got partners in China and partners in Switzerland, so that we can actually run common studios where we explore these ideas. To me, as a long-standing survivor, you know, I started the world of education in 1982. There is a real question that we have to ask about what we do and why we do it. Do we just do the same thing again and again because we have student numbers sitting in the classroom? Pedagogy, is it what is left out after everything else is put in? How we do it, isn't that very important? And what is the difference between a profession and a practice? You're licensed to belong to a professional community, but your practice can be very, very different. So you can be an interior designer or you can be a filmmaker, but you can have ecological sensibilities. You can have different kinds of consciousness. How do we ask these questions inside institutions? How do we pose them to our faculty and to our students? How do we battle it out with industry and our parents? These are all borders. So the borders are between clarity and complexity, what is visible and invisible, between modernist and postmodernist, and also today between the digital and the post-digital. We have entered what is officially now called the post-digital space. And that space to design for and to live in is different. And so modernist or postmodern arguments don't really matter in a post-digital space, because If you say postmodernists focus on stories and power and agency and experience, the young person who's using the tweet or the like button and send something viral over 20 or 40 or 60 people, whether it's true or not true, in a post, it's a different world. It's a very, very different world. So my contention is that we are today looking at pedagogy and practice at the borders. We cannot look at progress as a function of science and technology alone. I think this is a common mistake made by governments and businessmen. They always only measure it in large-scale industrial terms of science and technology. We have to understand that knowledge is produced and not transmitted, that we have to work together to produce knowledge, and that in the end, our real world is the lab. Real events and real phenomena are our texts, and that's what we need to work with. This is another picture of place and how we have to relook at place design. This is the science gallery now with interactive installations where people are going to go in there and walk and things are going to happen. So how do you design for spaces which are now of immersive experiences with satellite data? So I close with my points on consciousness. It's not organ specific. It's not about the brain and the hand. But it is emergent. It comes from conditions we put together. And culture unifies. It does not fragment. If we look to ourselves, to our cultures, to our tradition, it will make us heal and become whole again. Right? But we tend to reject it because it's not Western science. I go back to my two cultures. So I give you the last 2 points. You can look at education as a function of society, or you can look at society as a function of education. For me, it has always been the latter. And that's why I took on the UNESCO chair. Society must be a function of education and not the other way around. In Srishti now, we have programs that no longer give a discipline. So we don't say textile design or product design or architecture. We create spaces which are sangamas, intersections of learning. Earth education and communication, land and livelihood studies, public space design, public history and heritage interpretation, digital humanities, heritage design, planning and management, urban design, conservation and sustainability. And heritage design could involve craft, it could involve music, it could involve space, it could involve monuments, it could involve anything. So basically what we're doing is, these are all degrees certified now and accredited by the University of Mysore. So we have both Master of Arts programs there and Master of Design programs there. There are many more, but I just put up that which would interest you. Our classrooms now tend to, I'm just showing you something that happens within a quick 2 days with first year kids. They come in, they not only do a pop-up, but they also paper, pencils, computer, laser cutters, sensors, pop-ups and prototypes lit up all in one class. That's where we are. I close with Vivekananda. I've been reading a lot of him, about his book on the making of man. And he says the mind and the intellect, the toolkit in its entirety is called the heart by us. And its re-education consists of imparting a new vision and a total understanding of the world around it, along with its own place in the total scheme of things, beings and happenings around. To understand that behind and beneath life's total play of change is the immutable reality, unaffected by anything including death and destruction, is to gain a new vision into the secret of living. I hope together we can, through consciousness and confluence, re-educate our hearts and give the future to our children and our grandchildren, because we've done a pretty bad job of living in it for ourselves. Thank you.
Okay, so the UNESCO chair at Shishti, so my presentation is now going to talk about basically what we do under the chair. So all the philosophical part or the pedagogical part has been mostly covered by Geeta, and I'm going to really hit on to what do we do or what have we done. So the chair was established in 2014, and as Geeta mentioned, it was obviously offered to Dr. Jyoti Hosagraha, who actually charted out the vision based on her research and her work. She's a scholar. She was based in Columbia University at the School of Architecture and Planning, GSAP. If you go to the next slide. So the three words have a reason why they came together: culture, habitat, and sustainable development. The idea was to understand cultural landscapes, to understand heritage through cultural landscapes, to understand what it means to preserve and conserve things through cultural landscapes. So the vision actually lies in understanding this connection, understanding what it means, what one means by the definition of cultural landscapes. If I simply put it, one is talking about beyond the building, beyond the built form. In both aspects, one is what you see as heritage. We mostly conceive heritage as a built form, as a fort or a palace, but we forget ecological heritage. We forget practices, we forget the lifestyle that exists around heritage. So the cultural landscape is more of the inside-out view of heritage. When you start looking at the building through its surroundings, through the people, through the communities, and the relationship that exists between all these three, or all the subsets of these three. The initiatives have thus been basically of identifying these connections, strengthening the relationships between the tangible and intangible, practices and habitat. And what is the outcome, or what are the implications? The implication is